Hey, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We'll be right back with today's guest, but we want to give a shout out to our partners, We Coach, a global community of women in high school sports, the Florida Coaches Coalition, and Vital Signs Wall of Fame. You've heard me say before, these are organizations that you need to have in your network. Now, don't hit that fast forward button. Stay with us for 3 minutes. Take a listen to our sponsorship shout outs, including a brand new sponsor. This is the first time we've had them on the show. Take a listen. Hey, I want to encourage you to go to district1.com for a better uniform experience. That's district followed by WON. And you'll really feel like you've won because District 1 offers you fully custom premium uniforms, one at a time replacement. So there's no need to ever replace a full set of uniforms just because you need one or two. And on-time delivery in 20 business days or less. Stop dealing with late deliveries and visit district1.com. Again, that's WON on the back end. Click the Team Gear button for your free quote. That's district1.com. We also want to say thanks to Hometown Ticketing, the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. Go to hometownticketing.com. They're going to show you how to sell your tickets online, not just for your athletic events, but things like school plays, concerts, dances, even graduation. And the best part, every step of the way, you'll have a dedicated client success manager that's providing you hands-on support. That's every step of the way. Go to hometownticketing.com right now. Simple and easy online ticketing. We also want to say thanks to Snap Mobile. Snap Mobile is the parent company for an entire suite of platforms designed to help you as an athletic director do your job better. SnapRaise.com is the website. Go to SnapRaise.com. You can check out all the platforms, but SnapRaise is the fundraising platform. We used it at our school with great success, and so can you. They even have a program where you get your funding before you actually start your fundraiser. I don't think anybody else does that. Go to SnapRaise.com. Check them out today. That's SnapRaise.com. We also want to thank Gipper. Branding and social media is what it's all about today. And Gipper is going to show you how to create world-class content for your school's social media channels. Promote your athletes, your teams, your program. You can do it all at Gipper.com. Use our podcast code ADPOD10 and you'll get 10% off. That's Gipper.com. Check them out today. We also want to say thanks to Wall of Fame by Vital Signs. The Wall of Fame is actually an interactive touchscreen video console that's going to highlight your school's top performers, both past and present, but it's so much more than that. Wall of Fame is also an extensive content program that helps you tell more compelling stories to better engage your audience. Go to vitalsignswalloffame.com. Check out their great products, and when you're ready to buy, use the link vitalsignswalloffame.com/Jake for a nice little discount. Check them out today. Vital Signs Wall of Fame. Bring your school's legacy to life. We also want to say thanks to Huddle. Go to huddle.com and change the way you see the game. Huddle is going to provide your school, your coaches, your athletes with the tools that they need to perform at the highest level. Huddle is going to make sure it's a professional grade solution to the challenges that we all face as athletic directors. At Huddle, we believe in sports and teams believe in Huddle. Go to huddle.com, join the 6 million users, and turn your school into a Huddle school. We also want to say thanks to Sideline Interactive indoor score tables and video boards. Their products not only generate income for your athletic department, but they also create the ultimate game day experience for your student athletes. One of the best purchases I ever made was our Sideline Interactive indoor score table. Go to sidelineinteractive.com, schedule a live web demo to see their tables and their boards in action. That's sidelineinteractive.com. And we want to thank Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack. Go to athleticsurveys.com. They're going to create a custom survey that allows you to take the pulse of your parents and your student athletes. ADs usually only hear back from the complainers, that squeaky wheel parent or maybe a frustrated athlete. And we need to hear back from them, but we also need to hear from the 98% that love and support our program And that's where Athletic Surveys comes in. Go to athleticsurveys.com. The survey they create will help you, as I said, take the pulse of your parents and your student athletes. That's athleticsurveys.com. Let them help you take your athletic program from good to great. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We have got a true master athletic administrator with us today and a lot of cool connections. Our guest is Kevin Bryant. As I mentioned, he is a certified master athletic administrator, a longtime athletic director at a couple of schools in Oregon, also worked at the college level, extremely active in the OADA, the Oregon Association for Athletic Directors. He's an author, he's a consultant, and he's my age, but he's still working a full-time gig. He is now the facility and game management coordinator at MY Alma Mater, Pacific University in Forest Grove, Oregon. Kevin Bryant, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much, Jake. Great to be with you. Always great to see another successful alum from Pacific.
Well, again, we'll talk about your history as we get going. We've been trying to schedule this for a while. So happy we were finally able to get it done. For our listeners, we're recording this on May 2nd, so it's going to be very timely when you're listening to it. Kevin, as you know, we always like to let our listeners have a chance to get to know our guests. So give us that bio, where you grew up, where you went to high school, maybe take us up through those college years at Western Washington. Then we'll take a break and hear more about your early career. But what's the Kevin Bryant origin story?
Well, thank you. I grew up here in the Portland area, went to Sunset High School locally, uh, loved to play tennis and basketball, was a member of a state championship team in 1975. We had two Division I players, ended up going to the University of Washington. And quite a run of athletes during that time. We won back-to-back state football championships as well. And so it was a really fun time to be a Sunset Apollo. And I had a dream that I was going to be able to play college basketball and went and walked on at Western Washington University in Bellingham and played for Chuck Randall, who is the man who invented the slam dunk rim. And played there for 4 years, had a great career, more than I probably would ever have thought, and ended up second in career scoring when I finished. And then played for a team called Athletes in Action with Campus Crusade for Christ for 2 years following that. Based in Canada, we had 6 NBA drafted players and traveled 150,000 miles in 2 years and played some of the best amateur teams in the world. So that's kind of the synopsis.
Yeah, I mean, again, you certainly touched on all the main bullet points. I want to go back to those days at Sunset High School. Again, we're the same age, went to high school at the same time and college, but talk a little bit about that experience. Sunset it wasn't a brand new school, but it didn't have a 50-year history. Talk a little bit about the culture and what it was like back in those mid 70s.
But we had a coach named John Wittenberg, who was one of the best coaches really in Oregon history. He didn't coach as long as a number of coaches have, but had a ton of success, Metro League championships, and then a state title that we won, a number of runner-up finishes, and I think he finished in the top 5, maybe 10 times. But he was a master coach and knew how to connect with students. He was a physical education teacher there. His wife was an English teacher. And we all, as athletes, had so much respect for Coach Wittenberg. And he was well ahead of his time in terms of his ability to go out and scout opponents, his preparation, his ability to communicate with us. He had longer hair than some of the players on the team, which was unusual, although in the 70s, not that much.
Right.
And just never felt like we came to a game unprepared. So it was a really amazing experience.
Yeah. Take our listeners back again. You mentioned the Metro Conference. I don't know if they still have that. So
Yeah,
many
you
new
bet.
schools have popped up.
Yeah.
What were some of those rivalry games like back in the day? Because the schools were very close proximity. So any memories stick out of a rivalry
Well, there
game or
were
two?
3 Beaverton high schools within the Beaverton School District, 3 Beaverton schools at that time, Aloha, Sunset, and Beaverton. Beaverton was the oldest, one of the oldest schools in Oregon. And so they had a tremendous group of athletes. Marion Parison Jr., whose dad, Marion Parison, was the head coach at Portland State. They had a couple of of his teammates that were well known throughout the metro area. One was the son of an NBA player. And we just had great rivalries with those local teams, Beaverton especially. Aloha was kind of in a down cycle, but Jesuit was in our league, which has always been really one of the best schools in Oregon athletically. And they were kind of on their way up at that time. Central Catholic was in our league. Our league was pretty spread out at that point. So we had an East and a West connection with David Douglas and Park Rose in our league. And now, of course, those are all in different leagues because of the growth since the 70s. But and then now there's 6 Beaverton high schools. So it's grown the Metro League that way. They were connected to Hillsborough schools at one point. Now they're not at all.
Yeah.
So it's the 6As have really grown. The largest schools in the state. They have a 6A classification system in Oregon.
Yeah, again, you talk about the growth. I remember I did my student teaching at Hillsborough High School, and I think 2 years later, Glencoe opened the second Hillsborough High School, and now, I mean, it's just that area, whole area's just exploded. Um, yeah, it's not about me. At the same time, I was across the river in Battleground, Washington. I went to Battleground. I was the only school in that district at the time. Now there's like 7 or 8 in the Battleground district. So anyway, let's talk a little college. As you mentioned, you went up to Western Washington, had a pretty darn good career there. What are some memories of that time up in Bellingham?
Well, Central Washington was our big rival, and I guess I don't know if they saw us as a rival. We played them, I think, 17 times in my college career and only beat them once. So they were perennially heading back to the NAIA national championships. And Dean Nicholson was their coach, and he followed his father. That's Nicholson Arena is what they played in. And we just didn't have the talent that they did. They had a number of Division I transfers, and the NAIA, of course, you could give scholarships based on ability. So they had every year were really tough, but enjoyed, Seattle Pacific, University of Puget Sound, Whitworth, Whitman. We played almost every school in the Pacific Northwest. There was the EVCO, the old EVCO with Southern Oregon, Eastern Oregon, Western Oregon, Eastern Washington, and Central Washington were all in our league. And now Eastern left us in my sophomore season and went Division I NCAA.
Right.
And so the Evergreen Conference broke up, and of course the NAI was designed by districts or groups, and so we were in I think District 1 was our NAI affiliation. But I love being away from home 5 hours from Portland, as a college guy, and having a chance to grow and be my own person, and the chance to play. I was probably a 6 man in high school, was honorable mention all league, was my most memorable accomplishment athletically in high school, and to go there and actually have a unique opportunity. I started 17 games as a freshman and kind of never looked back. My sophomore year, I was chosen as one of 48 players in the country to play in the National Sports Festival in Colorado Springs. When I look back at the roster, there's 7 NBA guys in that group that played of the 48. So I was definitely not in the right place, but it was sure an honor to be with all those guys. They were much, much more athletic than I was and much better players, but it certainly was a neat honor to be a part of that.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. That's very cool. Hey,
Yeah.
I'm going to throw a name at you. You mentioned Whitman College in Walla Walla. One of my best friends from high school ended up going to Whitman, played football and basketball for him. Jay Buckley. Does that name ring a bell? He was a guard for them.
Okay. You talking about Whitworth or Whitman?
Whitman.
Okay. Because I didn't know they had football. They must have dropped football some time ago because they haven't had football for quite a number of years. But no, that name doesn't ring a bell.
Okay. Well, and that's his fault for not making a better impression. Okay.
Ah,
Um, let's talk athletes in action. I remember seeing those results. They would play, University of Washington or someone with that traveling group. What was that experience like? Because again, that was, national and international.
yeah, we were fortunate in some ways. We were located in Canada, in Abbotsford, British Columbia, right outside Vancouver. There was also a USA team that was located down in Anaheim. And those were the major college guys, the Marvin, the Delphs, and a couple of big guys that played for UCLA. They had a really Division I lineup. Most of our guys were smaller colleges that had great careers. So we were a fairly big team. We had a couple of 7-footers, a couple of 6'10". Basketball, of course, in Canada wasn't what it was in the US. So we played every college in Canada 2 or 3 times, traveled to every province. UVic, University of Victoria, and Simon Fraser were 2 of the better teams in the country, and we played them annually. And then we got down to the US a bunch and played, University of Iowa. We played Boston College. We played a number of teams throughout. We played some AAU with guys that had graduated as well as the year went on. And then we played national teams. We played the Russians the year before I joined the team that won the 76 Olympics. There were a number of guys off that team. We played the Yugoslav national team in 1982 that won the 80 Olympics and beat them twice. We traveled to Europe for about 3 weeks when the Iron Curtain was still up and played in a pre-European tournament to get those European teams ready. And we played the Czechs and the Poles and you name it, all the national teams, especially in the Eastern Bloc, that were really quite an amazing trip to be there and experience machine guns and German Shepherds as you drove through their welcoming to their country and all of that. It was quite an amazing experience.
Again, I can just imagine that, the sports was cool on its own right, but, just in the historical perspective and the different cultures, wow, great stuff. Thanks for sharing that. For listeners, our guest today is Kevin Bryant. He's a certified master athletic administrator, longtime athletic director in the state of Oregon. We're going to hear more about that. Let's go and take our first break. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to thank Hometown Ticketing for their support of the podcast. Go to hometownticketing.com. They're the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and to colleges. They're going to show you how to set up and sell tickets for your events online, not just your sports events, but things like school plays, concerts, dances, even graduation. And the best part, Hometown's going to provide you a dedicated client success manager. It's going to be by your side every step of the way, giving hands-on support. That's every step of the way. Go to hometownticketing.com today and check it out. Simple and easy online ticketing. We also want to say thanks to Snap Mobile. Snap is the parent company to an entire suite of platforms designed to help you as an athletic director do your job better. You've got Snap Connect, Snap Store, Snap Manage, and of course, Snap Raise. We've used it at our school with tremendous success. Our parents loved it, our coaches loved it, and it works. They've helped schools just like yours raise over $700 million. They even have a program where you can get your funding before you actually start your fundraiser. I don't think anybody else offers that. Go to snapraise.com. Check out the entire suite today. That's snapraise.com. Welcome back, everyone. Our guest is Kevin Bryant, certified master athletic administrator, currently at Pacific University in Oregon, but he was a long-time athletic director in the Northwest. Kevin, after college, you had the great opportunity to, play pro, almost play pro, but then I'm going to guess you settled into a journey of teaching and coaching, ultimately becoming an AD. Take us back to those days. What were some of those early jobs, and how did that lead to that first job as an athletic director?
Well, I was interested in taking ministry as a vocational career. At a college, I got a speech communications degree and was thinking about ministry vocation. That was the first step with AIA. It was part of Campus Crusade. And then after that experience, I got married. My wife and I moved to Eugene, Oregon, where I began to coach at Churchill High School, home of the Lancers, and was there for 3 years. And then we moved back to Bellingham, where I'd gone to college, and I became the area director for Young Life for a couple of years. And it was during that time that I began to think more seriously about coaching as a full-time career. I was coaching up there at Seaholm High School, the Mariners, and thought seriously about went through quite a struggle, I think, of wondering if coaching was something I wanted to commit myself to. And I remember hearing a story from Billy Graham, who was asked by a young coach what he thought he should do with his life. Should he coach or should he go into ministry vocationally? And his answer was, a coach will have more impact in 1 year than a pastor will in a lifetime. And that young man decided to go on to coach. And again, who knows if that was braggadocio or whatever, but certainly it impacted me. And I left ministry vocationally and went back to Western, got my master's in education, and began to coach where I had played at Western Washington for 5 years. And during that time, I was also the director of athletic marketing. And I began to see that maybe my gifts were more in the athletic administration end than in the coaching end. And so over that 5 year period, you're younger and pretty hungry. And I ended up applying and receiving the opportunity to become the athletic director at Whitworth University in Spokane. And so left Western and went over there. It was also at the time the men's tennis coach as the AD and also got to teach in their physical education program. So that was for 2 years.
You mentioned director of marketing, and this had to be back in the 80s, early 90s. Now, marketing, branding is all anybody talks about. What was marketing like back then?
Well, pretty hands-on. Obviously, we were just starting, the whole, well, a lot of the electronic opportunities were just starting to be developed, but a lot of footwork, hand-to-hand connections with people and relationship building, and got involved in Rotary there. Bellingham's a fairly small community. Western's pretty well known, so to have that connection was fabulous. We developed Viking Night, which was a fundraising auction and dinner that went on for almost 20 years, and I think raised by the time it was done, several $1 million for the athletic program. We brought in speakers. Our first speaker, sponsored by the bank up there, was Roy Firestone from ESPN, who had just come from Las Vegas to a crowd of about 300 in Bellingham. And they had consecutive speakers then each year. They had Dick Vitale up there. They had a couple of comedians that were helping to draw people to uh, the Frank Layden of the Utah Jazz was another
Right.
that we ended up having up there. So those developed a lot of relationships in the community and showed us that we were, connecting, outreaching, and really made our athletic program much more visible. So that was
Good.
kind of fun.
And those are types of events that somebody could do right now, still, in this day and age,
Absolutely.
you're bringing in those
Absolutely.
speakers.
That's right.
What was the transition from Whitworth? What was the next step?
After Whitworth, yeah, I kind of had the D1 desires and had met a friend in college that was becoming the athletic director at Portland State University, Jim Sturk. So I left Whitworth after 2 years and came back to Portland, where I'd grown up, to become the associate AD for external relations at Portland State as they were making their move from D2 to D1 in the Big Sky Conference. And that was a very challenging time. A lot of transition with our leadership at the college, as well as in the league and in the venues. Portland State at that time did not have very quality facilities. We were playing our football games downtown. We were, at one point, having 16 to 20,000 people come to watch Texas A&M Kingsville. And when we went to the Big Sky, the crowds weren't nearly the same. The relationship between Montana State, Sac State, all those schools just wasn't developed. So the interest level was fairly low. Portland State's, I think, the largest school in the state in terms of total numbers, but there's people from all over the country that come to Portland and take classes. They're not necessarily, football fans or basketball fans. But men's basketball had been away for quite some time. They had dropped it. They added it back during my time there. We hired a guy named Richie McKay, who I know has been Division I coach now for many years, was at Oregon State and was at Pepperdine. He was back east at Liberty a couple different times, assistant at Virginia. And Richie came in and we began to reestablish men's basketball. Freeman Williams had been a name
Yeah.
that anybody from basketball lore knows from the Portland area, was the leading scorer in the country when he was at Portland State. We actually opened the Rose Garden when they were just opening, and 1,200 people in a facility for 26,000 doesn't go well. So then we were scrambling to get people to our own home facility as well as the Coliseum, and it was a really tough time. We thought it was going to go much easier. I think the financial resources just didn't appear as was kind of promised by local folks, and so it was a very challenging time.
Yeah, again, I was wondering if you were going to mention Freeman Williams. Certainly people, like us, from the Northwest, we're going to recognize that name instantly. Well, you've had a tremendous career so far. I mean, worldwide, Division I. What brought you to high school or back to high school?
Well, things didn't work out as I would have liked at Portland State. And so I left and began to fundraise again for Young Life. There is a property over in Central Oregon where it was a group called the Rajneeshis that that taken over Central Oregon, almost 500 acre, 100,000 acres of Central Oregon land became donated by a Montana billionaire named Dennis Washington to Young Life, and I became the chief fundraiser to try to raise $10 million in 3 years to put that into a Young Life camp. And so it had 500 buildings on site, an operating airport, and one building, 2 acres under one roof. That was where the Rajneesh would do all his speaking. And yeah, we were able to raise that money in 3 years. And so it's a pretty incredible facility now. About 1,000 kids are coming a week. The 2 acres under one roof is now the largest continuous maple floor in the U.S. Is a sports center with a climbing wall and a sports cafe, and was a quarter-mile long zip line into a man-made lake, Olympic-sized pool. You name it. They've developed some great resources for high school and middle school students to come over and enjoy. So that was a 3-year project for me. And then from there, I went into high school athletics as an athletic director, and just loved the opportunity to be around coaches every day and athletes. And so that continued my development throughout this profession, which I think is the best profession in the world.
Yeah, it's funny you should mention that. I wasn't aware of that part of your career. My wife and I just got done watching I think it's on Netflix,
Yep.
the 4-part series.
Yeah.
And again, we were back in Oregon when all that was going down. So, wow. So there's a viewing tip for you listeners. We're going to take another break, but our guest is Kevin Bryant. He's a certified master athletic administrator. And as I've mentioned, a long-time director of athletics in the state of Oregon, and still working today, working at Pacific University, which again is my alma mater. We're going to take a quick break, but we're going to be back with some more. So please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We also want to say thank you to Gipper for their support. These days, it's all about marketing and branding your athletic department. Go to Gipper.com. and they will show you how athletic directors across the country are creating world-class marketing content for their school's social media channels. Promote your athletes, your teams, your coaches, your entire school. You'll find out how to do it at Gipper.com. Mention the podcast and use our code ADPOD10 and you'll get 10% off. That's Gipper.com. Create custom content for your school's social media channel. We also want to thank Wall of Fame by Vital Signs. They're on a mission to bring your school's legacy to life. The Wall of Fame is actually an interactive touchscreen video console that's going to highlight your school's top performers, both past and present, in athletics, academics, and the arts. But it's so much more than that. The Wall of Fame is also an extensive content program that allows you to tell more compelling stories to better engage your audience. Go to vitalsignswalloffame.com, check out their great products. And when you're ready to buy, use this link, vitalsignswalloffame.com/Jake, and you'll get a nice discount. Vital Signs, bring your school's legacy to life. Hey, welcome back, everyone, to the Educational AD Podcast. Kevin, you have taken us on your journey post-college, athletes in action and, the college, number of stops at the college level, and then your project for Young Life in Central Oregon. Great stuff. What brought you into the realm of high school athletic administrator?
Well, I wanted to get back together with coaches and student athletes. I missed that opportunity. I hoped I'd always have the freedom to connect again, and was given that opportunity at Aloha High School in Beaverton, where I was the AD for 6 years. And then a series of opportunities came up after that to be at Tigard High, and then at Hudson's Bay High School in Vancouver, and then become the district AD in the Redmond School District, and then finally at Centennial on the east side of Portland for a year. So I spent 16 years as a high school AD and 16 years as a college athletic administrator. And the high school opportunity for me was unique in the sense of really being able to dive into my profession, make friends that have been long-term friends, work on my CMAA, my CAA, develop some speaking tools and abilities, and then to write. But more than anything, I guess, to me, the thing that motivated me every day was being around coaches and athletes, and the chance to see athletics become a positive opportunity in their lives like it had in mine. And we had a tremendous amount of success at Sunset. I never saw that happen as much at Aloha, but it didn't stop me from trying my best to connect with kids every day and coaches to make it the best possible experience for our athletes. And I try to carry that on to the other high schools that I was at as well.
You mentioned a number of schools, and again, I'm familiar with them, let's say casually, because I grew up in that area, but very diverse settings. Sunset, there in the Tualatin Valley, Hudson's Bay. I mean, at that time, I want you to share a little bit about the student population at Hudson's Bay, because they were a powerhouse athletic team back in the
Yeah.
70s in just about every sport. And then you went to Central Oregon and Redmond, and then finished up at Centennial. Again, another historic powerhouse, particularly in football. Um, what are some of those memories? I know I said Hudson's Bay, but what are some memories of that time that, let's say, stick with you today, years later?
Well, I think I was better, Jake, at schools that needed help. I was pretty good at coming in to start things, putting in together structure, hiring good people, trying to promote vision and a future than I would be probably at a really good school. When I was at Tigard, we went to playoffs in every sport every season for 4 years. I never felt like that was because of me. It was more the neighborhood that kids grew up. We had good coaches, great facilities, and really good athletes, and then a weaker league. But to be the Aloha in a metro league that involved, Sunset and Westview, the newer school, and then Jesuit and the Southridge and New Beaverton School, we were always kind of on the lower end. But I enjoyed the opportunity to try to create things out of whatever environment. That's like you mentioned, Hudson's Bay ended up being that way. The man that I coached with at Western Washington, Brad Jackson, had gone to Hudson's Bay. His dad had been the principal there, and they are now, not what they were at all in terms of their socioeconomics. So very challenging situation, more like Aloha. Centennial was very similar. The central core of Portland now has moved east. So Gresham, Centennial, Park Rose, all those schools now are really challenged socioeconomically, and obviously that has a huge impact on the education they receive as well as the athletic opportunities. So to go to Central Oregon was just quite a gift. I was the AD over two high schools at the same time that were 5A schools, and the challenge alone was one of the highlights of my career of just trying to manage two different athletic departments that were rivals in the same city and the same district. And every day I'd spent half a day at this school, half a day at that. I ended up getting a hat with both logos on it, so they knew that I was committed to both. When games would go on, I'd try to stay in the end zone so they wouldn't think that I was sitting on one side or the other. It became as frustrating as it was challenging, but I loved every minute of the opportunity to do something kind of crazy.
Now, I'm having a senior moment. What was the second high school in Redmond?
Ridgeview,
Ridgeview. Yeah. Oh my
which
goodness.
is, new now, it's 10 years old. So they had this amazing facility, and a bunch of kids wanted to go there and those kind of things. And they've now really are coming around. They're not ranked; they're ranked first in the state in baseball right now. They've had we hired at one point we had both football jobs open at both high schools, had 52 applicants, including a number of small college coaches that were interested. And it's a great place to live and all those things. Obviously, it's pretty expensive in Central Oregon, so that discourages some, but it just beautiful place. Both about 900 students, and compete against the Bend schools primarily, and
Mhm.
out to Hood River and the Dalles, and it kind of has become that league, Pendleton even. So
Yeah. Again, just the names of my youth. I was born in the Dalles. So,
oh
um,
wow.
you mentioned the opportunity to work on your CAA, your CMAA in writing.
Yeah.
We have a lot of young ADs that listen to the podcast, and I think it's important to talk about the journey, certainly the journey you and I have been on with our state and national organizations. So talk a little bit about that. How did you get involved with, in your case, OADA and with the NIAAA?
Well, there's a guy named Pete Lukic who's one of the leaders now in our state. He's at Sunset High, and he's been there almost 40 years. And for a long time, Pete was the typical AD that was trying to handle all of his management duties and those kind of things. And he told me when I originally started to get involved in the OADA, hey, just stay in your lane, just do your stuff in your school, etc. And now he's become this statewide leader that, while he didn't read much ever before, is constantly handing out books to people and developing resources for ADs and all that stuff. I had a similar path, but it was through the OADA. And there it's like many states where you sign up to put your name in as a secretary and you're elected, and then you go through the chairs of secretary, treasurer, vice president, president. And I did that. And then in the midst of my year about to take over as president, our president, Greg Smith, who ended up going back to Wisconsin, left. And so I got a 2-year appointment really as president of the OADA. And that really jumped me into the NIAAA and being able to lead. I was involved in the credentials committee at one point, and then actually helped write LTI 611, and then was the national chair for 5 years of 710 on current issues. And so it was a unique opportunity to meet ADs from all over the country, develop resources together, and then to lead. I have a deep heart for athletic directors. I think what ADs do is incredible, and I wanted to do whatever I could to help encourage them in their daily growth and hope. Our conference in Oregon's in April, and most ADs feel like, hey, if I can get to Sun River in April and make it, I can make it through the rest of the year. And so I appreciated the opportunity these many years to be involved with the OADA, and we've had great leadership out here. And our current executive director, Dave Hood, is an amazing former AD here in Oregon, and the folks he has working with him are fabulous. So it's been a unique opportunity. And then I have a tremendous amount of respect for the NIAAA, and have very much appreciated my opportunities to connect with ADs from all over.
Yeah, great synopsis of the importance of being involved with NIAAA. You throw a name out there, Greg Smith. Greg was the person that reached out to me and brought me on board for National Certification Committee. I had no idea all these years he was from Oregon. Okay.
Oh man, he is such a proud Wisconsin though. He loved whenever he could jab the Ducks or the Beavers because he's such a strong Wisconsin fan. But we've appreciated the relationship that's continued all these years. He was way out in Eastern Oregon. He was out in Hermiston.
Wow.
And then he left and was very well liked here in Oregon and continues to be.
Okay. Yeah. No, Greg's great. We see him every year. He helps run the cornhole tournament for NADC. He's got that distinctive voice too. You can
he really does. Yeah, he's
hear
an
him
amazing
before you
guy.
see him. Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Well, talking about OADA, and people like to come to Sun River. Hey, I would love to come and do an LTI course or present a workshop. So I'm going to put that out there just for anybody who might be listening for the 2024 OAD conference. Our guest is Kevin Bryant. He's a certified master athletic administrator. Tremendous background in athletics, both as an athlete and as an administrator. We're going to take another break. I know that's shocking to our regular listeners, but we're going to be back with some more. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to thank Huddle for their support of the podcast. Go to huddle.com and change the way you see the game. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years, and it was fantastic. But when I became an athletic director, I made sure our school was a Huddle school. And all of our coaches, volleyball, basketball, soccer, you name it, loved the tools that Huddle provided for our school, our teams, our kids. Huddle's going to provide a professional grade solution to the challenges that we all face as athletic directors. Go to huddle.com and see why we believe in sports and teams believe in Huddle. Join the 6 million users and turn your school into a Huddle school. Welcome back, everyone, to the Educational AD Podcast. Kevin, one of the parts of the podcast that I really enjoy is having our guests share some of the mentors that they've had in their life. None of us get to where we're at on our own. The expression that I use probably far too often, but I love it, is I still hear the voices of my mentors in my head. So do you have any voices that you still hear?
Oh, you bet. Yeah, thanks, Jake. Yeah, a guy named Jim Eney was a boss of mine twice with Young Life. And Jim started his Young Life career up in Bellingham, Washington, where I met my wife, and she was working in Young Life Club with him. And just have had a long time relationship since the late 70s with Jim and Janet. Jim continues to be a great friend, honest person I can go to that gives me great feedback. And one of the best lessons that Jim's ever taught me is unasked for advice always comes across as criticism. And so I try very hard with my kids and with those that I work with to really reserve my opinions and try to encourage versus tell people what to do. Or and I try to live with that thought in my mind. But he's also taught me so much about my own spiritual life, and we've shared some similar family backgrounds with alcoholism, some things that we've had to overcome ourselves in terms of our bringing up, growing up. So Jim's been a good friend. And then a couple guys in athletic director world here in Oregon, Bill Bowers and Mike McGann, who were very long time involved in the OADA and the NIAAA, are guys that I've always looked up to, respected greatly, and tried to be like. So those guys have been good friends, and their leadership alone has encouraged my own.
Yeah, I love to hear when mentors are still involved, with your life. It's not just a name from the past. And I know this for a fact because I interviewed a student athlete at Pacific University a while back, that you are now serving as a mentor to a number of people in that next generation of leaders. How's that experience at Pacific University, working again with some young people?
Well, Jake, it's just been a thrill. I mean, I didn't think I'd get this opportunity. Our athletic director, Keith Buckley, could have chosen any number of people much younger than me that have a kind of an entry level, kind of back to the beginning kind of a opportunity work wise. But I've got 50 federal work study students that work for me in the athletic department of setting up and tearing down events. And my boss, Kira Hine, is fabulous. We presented together at this year's NIAAA and then presented just a couple of weeks ago at the OADA on restoring civility to athletics together. And Kira's a 28-year-old Asian female with a master's degree from the University of Washington in athletic leadership. And she has been incredible to work with and work for. And so that's really helped, my connection here to Pacific. And I really love what we have going on here at Pacific in terms of care for our athletes and our coaches. How we are not a Division IV school, we really are Division III. We want to be competitive. We want to be as excellent as we can. I'm amazed every day at how our coaches connect with our athletes. I just spent a weekend down in Sacramento with the crew team, driving the van back and forth between the various locales they needed to get to. And again, just kind of stunned by our coach's ability, Coach Kopp's ability to connect with our athletes, and the competitive nature of our athletes, and just how bright they are. It's remarkable. I think the future always looks bright to me when you're around young folks like this.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It almost makes me want to get back into athletic administration full time. Uh, we'll do this at the end of the podcast, but Kevin, if one of our listeners wanted to reach out, find out more about how you do things at Pacific. Listeners, I think you've got a tremendous resource here, or pick your brain about just anything athletics. What's the best way they can get a hold of you?
Well, I'd welcome any contact or connection. You can reach me on my cell at 503-515-5847. 503-515-5847.
Okay. All right. Outstanding. Thanks for giving that out. Once again, our guest is Kevin Bryant. We've got more coming, so please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We also want to say thank you to Sideline Interactive. Go to sidelineinteractive.com, schedule a live web demo, and see their indoor score tables and video displays. One of the best purchases I ever made as an athletic director was our Sideline Interactive indoor score table. Use it for home games, of course, but we also use it for pep rallies, for signing ceremonies. Their products are tremendously versatile, and their customer service is just outstanding. Go to sidelineinteractive.com. Once again, their products not only generate income for your athletic department, but they also create the ultimate game day experience for your student athletes. Go to sidelineinteractive.com. See what they can do for you and your school. Welcome back, everyone. We're visiting with Kevin Bryant, Certified Master Athletic Administrator, longtime AD in the state of Oregon, also Washington, and he's currently the Facility and Game Management Coordinator at Pacific University in Forest Grove, Oregon. Kevin, one of the things we try to do with the podcast is this idea of sharing best practices. So I'm going to put you on the spot. What are some things that you have done at your schools that you have seen that you're particularly proud of, things that you would consider best practices that you can share with our listeners? Anything come to mind?
Well, Jake, one of the things that had a huge impact on me while Aloha was, I guess, a feeling of inadequacy that our kids weren't really learning character on purpose. And I wasn't quite sure even how to begin to do that. And it resulted in me several years later attending the University of Idaho to earn my PhD in sport pedagogy and character ed by one of the leading sports ethicists in our country, Dr. Sharon K. Stoll. And so I went there and I learned that the higher one goes in their athletic participation, the less morally developed they become. And that's what all the research says. And so I was kind of shocked by that because I assumed that by putting on a uniform and going out every day, that you're going to learn these great values that we espouse in terms of educationally based athletics. And I've become more frustrated with those terms recently because I think it's easy to say them and everybody nods their head, whether you talk about sportsmanship or character or whatever it might be. And yet we really have no idea what we're talking about. And so to go there to define clearly what character is, what it isn't, to realize that we have a social character that are things that we learn in sport, like being on time and hard work and teamwork and sacrifice and some of those things that I've learned are really social character, and they're not bad. They're great for our everyday workforce, the social values that you learn through sport. But my professor made it very clear to me, Kevin, you could have well organized, hardworking, dedicated, team oriented car thieves if we didn't have a moral focus that was truly the character. And so things like honesty, justice, respect, responsibility, and the highest value of love, if those aren't taught on purpose, our students aren't going to learn them. So for those ADs and the coaches that talk about these things at the beginning of the season and then wrap it up at the end with a similar kind of thing, doesn't mean that our athletes are learning true character, and that happens when we're intentional, and it's the only way that it happens. Having it even on signs. I mean, there's a number of ways that we can demonstrate our commitment to character. You know, we have to model it first. There's education, and then there's environment. If you're as a coach, if you're screaming epithets at your kids and yet talking about character, our kids are too smart. They realize you're saying one thing but doing another. So we need both, we need those three things, you know, education, environment, and modeling. And so um, we have got to model the values that we espouse. And those values of honesty, justice, respect, responsibility, and love can be taught the same way sports skills are, but they must be taught. They can't just be caught. They can't be, you know, teachable moments that we use these phrases. If we truly want educational based athletics, then we need to be focused on, you know, really doing that and not just talking about it. So it's important we're specific. And when we tell parents, almost like a guarantee, in this athletic program, you're going to walk away and understand how character can be developed in your life. And when we're talking about lifelong values, honesty, justice, respect, responsibility, and love, I continue to kind of kid with people. You know, I've never had an out of bounds play change my life, but those values are the ones that really do. And so if we focus on those, we're only going to be successful no matter what your win-loss record is. Those are the kind of deep dives into someone's life that make a difference forever.
But you probably noticed me scribbling like crazy. What was that opening quote? The higher you go in athletics.
Participation, the less morally developed you become, because the focus is totally on outcome. And you know, there was some study that was done. I can't remember how many years ago now, but they asked competitive Olympic athletes if you could take a substance that would guarantee you a gold medal, but only
Right.
give you 5 years to live, would you take it? And the number of those that said yes
Yeah.
was incredible. You know, it was well over 50%. And so, how can we have sport be the type of opportunity that is truly life changing? Um, because if only 5% of our student athletes are going on to play college sport, what's happening to the other 95%? What are we leaving them with other than dirty uniforms and some memories of practices, you know?
Yeah, no, great stuff. Yeah, that is certainly a best practice. I'm going to be doing some more reading on that. Thanks so much for sharing. Uh, Once again, for our listeners, Kevin Bryant, Certified Master Athletic Administrator, is our guest today. We're going to take a quick break, but we're coming back with some more. We're not done yet. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to welcome a brand new sponsor to the podcast, District One. I want you to go to district1.com for a better uniform experience. And that's district followed by WON. And you'll feel like you won because District One offers fully custom premium uniforms. You've got one at a time replacements, so there's no need to have to replace a full set of uniforms just because you need one or two. And District One provides on time delivery in 20 business days or less. Stop dealing with late deliveries. Go to district1.com. Again, that's WON on the back end. Click the Team Gear button for your free quote. That's district1.com. And welcome to the Educational AD Podcast. Hey, welcome back, everyone. We're visiting today with Kevin Bryant, Dr. Kevin Bryant, Certified Master Athletic Administrator, and he's longtime AD. He's currently the Facility and Game Management Coordinator at Pacific University, a great school in the state of Oregon. Kevin, you and I were talking during the break, and you mentioned that you wanted to share something with our listeners, and I'm intrigued by it. So what are you going to talk about?
Well, Jake, I think a lot of my career, I look back and I think with the best possible motives, I was doing things for our athletes and for our coaches. And I'm not sure I was doing it with them. And so, we can spend a lot of time and energy and effort doing things that maybe don't meet the needs of the people we think we're meeting their needs. And then we get frustrated or offended when they don't return to us what we're looking for. So I think we need to involve our coaches and athletes much more in our plans. We have really bright student athletes. They're very socially aware. They're very engaged, as are our coaches. And there were a couple of coaches here, a couple of ADs locally that started working on coach capacity building seminars that they would do together with two high schools. And so when I first went to Redmond, I developed a list of about 40 topics and sent it out on a Google Doc to my coaches and allowed them to vote on the topics they were most interested in. And looked at those, and 5 to 7, I said, okay, that's going to be our coaches meetings. And I developed the topics on PowerPoints. I have them available. If somebody wants them, I'd be glad to share them. But I got about 25 or 30 PowerPoints that we used as coaches meetings on topics that I allowed my coaches to choose. Well, you can imagine when you're at a coaches meeting where there's interest because they got to give input at the beginning, then there's attendance. So one of the things that I've always done is I think food's important when you meet. So I would cook these guys breakfast, and once a month we would meet and we would share one of these topics. And the conversations were very rich and very challenging. And I would look back and I think they were because I allowed our coaches to give input. We also developed a SALT program that I call it Student Athlete Leadership Team. And the same way, this is your athletic program. It's easy to say that. How do we make that real to these student athletes? So what are they experiencing? What is it they want to experience? And how can I, in a leadership position, do my best to make sure that that happens instead of, again, doing something for them that they may not want and then thinking, hey, look at how I'm serving my athletes when in a sense, I'm really not. So I think becoming more aware of the true needs and allowing input into this process will have more help than we ever thought possible, and really practical, real help.
Well, I love the concept, and again, athletic directors, we say we're coaching the coaches, but we're also, whether it's direct or indirect, we're coaching the student athletes as well. Pick a topic, or pick an instance from your sharing program with your coaches that, whether it was the coach turning a corner or whether it was impact with kids, what's something that really sticks out for you that you could say, again, with equal parts pride and humility, hey, this was a good idea.
Well, I think the good idea was giving them input, so we had real practical topics. But one of the topics that I remember us discussing in Redmond was trying to figure out the line between friendship and mentorship. And that became a topic that we talked about. And so is it possible with your young coaches that they could walk over a line that you don't want them walking over when they've heard you say, hey, we got to have a major impact on the lives of our students, so they go a little further than they might or they share things that they shouldn't, or those types of things. So even having an awareness to realize there's some topics we might not want to talk about. And if you do, you want to make sure maybe there's another adult in the room. Be very careful about, rides home with kids and connecting with kids on social media without people being aware and those kind of things. And they can easily lead to problems. Kids can easily think of adults and want a more intimate relationship, or think that, hey, this is what was being communicated to me. And so that topic, as much as I want our athletes to have an impact of a coach, I also want our coaches to be safe and want to know what the real boundaries are. So it's important we talk about those.
Yeah, so very important. I'm going to do it again. Kevin, if one of our listeners wants to reach out, find out more about, some of the programs that you did as an AD or things that you're doing right now as a leader, as well as your book and everything else, what's the best way that they can get a hold of you?
Yeah, text or call 503-515-5847. 503-515-5847. That's my cell.
And you can also find Kevin on LinkedIn as well. Kevin, this has just been so cool. It's been great. I knew of you, but our paths really hadn't crossed that much during our career. And this has just been such a joy. But we're not done yet. We always wrap up with the athletic director's toolbox. You certainly established for our listeners, if they didn't already know, that you know your way around the world of athletics. But we're going to take our final break and hear from Athletic Surveys, who sponsor our toolbox segment. And when we come back, I'm going to challenge you to send out a brand new athletic director on their very first job, but I'm only going to let you put 3 things in their toolbox. So stay with us. We're going to find out what Kevin Bryant is going to put into his athletic director toolbox. We want to thank Athletic Surveys for sponsoring the toolbox segment of the podcast. Go to athleticsurveys.com. They're going to show you how they can create a custom survey for your school, lets you take the pulse of your parents, your student athletes, and other groups. Athletic directors typically only hear back from the complainers, that squeaky wheel parent, or maybe it's a frustrated student athlete. And we need to hear back from them, but we also need to hear from the 98% that love and support our program. And that's where Athletic Surveys comes in. Their survey is going to let you, as I said, take the pulse of these groups on campus. And that's tremendously valuable information to have when you're talking with a squeaky wheel parent or a school board member or your principal. So go to athleticsurveys.com. Let them help you take your athletic department from good to great. Well, it's that time of the podcast. We have just spent a great time with Kevin Bryant, longtime athletic director, high school, college administrator, currently still working at Pacific University in Forest Grove, Oregon. But right now, I'm going to challenge Kevin to send out a brand new athletic director on their very first job, but I'm only going to let him put 3 things in their toolbox. So, Kevin, what 3 items are going to go into your athletic director toolbox?
Well, the first one would be vision. The Bible says, without a vision, the people perish. And I think our communities and our coaches need to know, our student athletes need to know what direction we're headed. So I think vision's one place. There's a great book called Visioneering. I would encourage anyone to read about having a vision. The second would be organization. We don't need someone who's so kind of heavenly minded, they're no earthly good. We need to have them see a big picture, but at the same time, as you know, if we aren't taking care of buses and officials and all those things, it doesn't matter how big your vision is. So you need to be organized and take care of those things. And then thirdly, I think you've got to have an impact. To me, the SALT thing that I talked about, develop relationships with student athletes. Don't get so disconnected by all the different things that you have to do that somehow you lose track of actually being able to impact the lives of student athletes directly.
I've heard I heard that book mentioned recently, Visionaries. I'll put you on the spot again. Do you have the author off the top of your head?
Oh my gosh. Visioneering is what it's called.
Visioneering.
Visioneering, yeah. And it's a pastor. I wasn't really aware it was a spiritual book, but it's about rebuilding the wall in Jerusalem. And the father of the pastor just recently passed away. He was a nationally TV national TV pastor. It's the son that wrote the book. And I think he's in Texas right now, but just had a huge impact on me in terms of my own personal life. If I had the courage to really pursue a vision in my life. So.
Well, again, great tools. I love the relationships. I love the organization stuff. And again, we already shared book recommendations with each other. Kevin, again, thanks so much for being on the podcast. All the best as you continue to mentor the next generation of leaders at Pacific University. And next time we get back to Oregon, which will probably be sometime this summer, definitely going to look to hook up with you guys.
That's great. I can't wait to see you in person.
Okay. For listeners, we do this just about every day, and we upload the Zoom recordings to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. We appreciate you listening. Come back next time for another great interview and just about every day for new content on the Educational AD Podcast. We'll see you next time.